In simple terms, there have always been two elements to SEO. Number one is ensuring that the search engines, that Google can understand the content on the website and the kind of keywords that you're trying to target. And number two, the search engines view your brand, your website domain, as being more authoritative, more trustworthy than that of the competition. Those have always been the two aspects of SEO, and that continues to be the case today. Now, looking at the second element of that, the trust, the authority, the way in which that's established has now become far more complex than it used to be. So there was, for a long time, essentially it just came down to the sheer quantity of links you could get pointing to your website, and consequently people engage in all sorts of sketchy, unethical tactics in order to acquire those sheer numbers. Now, that's the nature of link acquisition has changed significantly. But one thing I want to stress is that whilst the whole area has become vastly more complex, link acquisition, in my opinion, continues to be the number one factor in determining website authority. So that it's absolutely not that it's gone away, it's just that the way in which it has to happen has evolved. It's grown up somewhat. So now it's absolutely imperative that any link that you acquire is done so in a legitimate fashion, which just means that the way in which we have to go about it is very different. So press releases, like legitimate press releases, talking about real things with really interesting stats and thinking in more of a traditional journalistic fashion, that's become a really kind of powerful link acquisition mechanism. Likewise, engaging with influencers and using those relationships to acquire links from websites, blogs within your target market. Again, really, really powerful. So link acquisition hasn't gone away, still super important. It's just that it has to be thought about far more strategically and in a far more brand orientated way. Now, other elements that have started to play an increasing role in recent years include engagement on the website. Now, this is quite difficult to define in a really clear way, because what constitutes good engagement in one market could be quite different in another. So for example, in some markets, you don't necessarily want people spending hours on your website. You want them to come in, perform a particular action, and if they go again, that's absolutely fine. Whereas in other markets, the time on site, the page views, the bounce rate, these things are really, really important. So when you think about engagement stats, I'd encourage you to think about it within the context of your industry. It's quite similar with social media. So there's been a debate over the role of social media for a long time in the SEO community, and while a lot of people would contest the direct causal link between social media and rankings, I think most people would generally accept now the strong correlation between the two. Particularly if you operate in a market where community is important and really building engagement between your audience and your brand is important. If you're not active, if you don't have a clear social media strategy, then that's a huge hole in that overall SEO strategy. The final thing I want to talk about is broader brand signals, and for me this is the most important thing to take away from this. If you put yourself in the shoes of the search engines, if you think about it from Google's perspective, if their goal is to determine the most trustworthy and credible brand, then if it were me, I don't think there would be anything more important than the sheer number of people going to a website, not via the search engines, but just going directly, or going to the search engines and making brand-related search queries. For example, if 10,000 people a day search for John Lewis TVs, well then I think Google can probably assume that John Lewis is a trusted source for televisions. So it's difficult, in one sense, this is difficult to directly impact and probably doesn't sound like SEO, but the point is that SEO in isolation just isn't really a thing anymore. It has to be part of a broader brand strategy. You have to be doing real things and adding real value to your audience and building an ever larger presence amongst that audience. And if you do that, then to some extent the SEO will take care of itself.